I'm in desperate need of help and advice. I found out that my wife had an affair with her former supervisor 35M at work, who's married himself with kids. We've been married for 5 years, and we're high school sweethearts. We were each other's first relationship and first everything. When we were little kids, we were even neighbors. She has always been there. We both came from broken homes, but we always had each other, and we created something different than what we grew up seeing, or at least that's what I thought. Maybe I was just one big idiot the entire time. I still work remote while my wife has since gone back to being in person. There's not many women in her field, and she used to vent to me a lot that her job was more in line with a boys' club. Her AP, who was still her supervisor at the time, was one of the good ones, supposedly, and looked out for my wife at work. Recently, my wife received a promotion, and I was so happy for her. She was now a supervisor herself. This came some new responsibility, such as having to take a few business trips during the year. Her first trip happened last week, Wednesday through Friday. Before she left, I told her that I'd be rooting for her from home, and she told me that she'd be leaving her heart with me and to take care of it. That's something she always says to me whenever we have to be apart. On Monday, she came home from work early. I could immediately tell that something was wrong. She looked overwhelmed, and there was a red mark on her right cheek. My wife is pale and tends to bruise easily. I asked her what happened, but she only asked me to hug her, said she just wanted to feel my embrace. I hugged her, and after a few moments, she proceeded to say there was an incident at work. She sat me down on the couch and made the confession that has destroyed me and completely uprooted my life. She had sex with her former supervisor on the team lead trip. I couldn't even process at first. It was like I was watching it happen to someone else, or like she was going to reveal it was a cruel joke. I think I would have accepted the cruel joke over reality. I was quiet during her whole confession, not saying one word. I was just in shock. Cheating is a sensitive topic for me, as it is for a lot of people. My own family was wrecked by an affair my dad had. I'm the one who caught him cheating and told my mom. My dad and I's relationship is not good at all because he blames me for ruining the family, and he has never forgiven me. My wife saw what cheating did to my family, and knew how much it tore me apart. Heck, she's seen me cry over this back when we were teens, and she comforted me. And then she turns around and does this to me, to us? Apparently, the man's own wife found out and confronted her husband and my wife at work. It was a big scene with employees and customers all present. The woman had called my wife white trash and slapped her. After the slap, other employees started interfering and the woman was escorted out of the building. My wife then called her older sister 30F. In her words, she said her sister scolded her and told her that she needed to tell me about the affair and that I needed to hear it from her. I still never said a word, and she asked me to please say something. The only thing I could muster up to say in the moment was I needed her to tell me what happened on the trip. She said on the second day of the trip, she went out for drinks with the other team leads and that the group stayed out late and she felt like she needed to participate for a team bonding experience. Throughout the night, each team lead wandered off until it was only her and her former supervisor left, and they went back to his room to listen to music. He kept complimenting her and telling her how sexy she was, and that if he were me, he wouldn't be able to keep his hands off her. He eventually kissed her. My wife told me she doesn't know what came over her, and that she wasn't thinking clearly, but she let him keep kissing her, which then turned to him groping her. They progressed to having sex. I didn't want any more details because I couldn't take it, and I got up off the couch, telling her to stop. She reached out to take my hand, but I moved away and told her not to touch me. She broke down crying and started profusely apologizing and begging for forgiveness, saying how it was the biggest mistake of her life, that she hates herself, and she wishes she could take it back. She kept repeating how much she loves me, and only me, that the alcohol clouded her judgment. I told her she needed to leave. She needed to call her sister to pick her up. She got up from the couch, crying even more, and tried to hug me, but I moved away again. She begged me not to do this, saying all kinds of stuff like she will quit her job, give me full access to her phone, saying we'll do counseling. I couldn't keep it together. I told her if she wasn't going to leave the house then I would. I didn't even stop to pack a bag or anything, but just went for the door. She grabbed my arm, I guess, to try to stop me from leaving, and kept pleading for me not to do this, and saying after everything we've been through that this can't be the end of us. Despite everything, seeing her in that state and leaving her behind while she was crying still tore me apart. Because I love her. I love her more than I ever thought was possible to love someone else. But she broke me. She tossed our entire life and future away. I ended up going to my mom's house, and that's currently where I'm staying. I don't know how I kept my senses during the drive, but when I arrived, I just cried. I don't even think my mom has even seen me cry as a teen or an adult. The only person who's ever seen me cry is my wife. I did tell my mom what happened because I honestly didn't know how to keep it from her with me showing up at her place in that way. She was broken-hearted over it. She and my wife always got along. My mom treated her like a daughter. That was their relationship. She didn't pass any judgment, but said I could stay as long as I needed, and tried to offer some words of comfort. Ever since I left, my wife has been blowing up my phone with calls and texts, but I haven't answered or wrote back. The texts have basically just been begging me to come home and to talk with her, asking where I am, and to please not give up on us. I just feel so broken. I thought I knew what this pain was like, but it's nothing compared to experiencing it yourself. I never thought my wife would do something like this. I always had the belief that there was no coming back from cheating for me, that the relationship would be over. But now, I keep thinking if I should give our relationship another chance. Go to counseling together and try to salvage the relationship. I keep thinking back to all the history we have, how much I love her, how we always felt like matching puzzle pieces, and how when I thought I had no one, she was there. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to proceed. I'm at a loss. Update 1. Thanks to everyone for the advice, concern, and resources. With everything going on, I haven't been able to respond to every comment or message, but they've been very much appreciated. This week has been the most excruciating. I feel like a helpless kid again, who can only watch as the world around me falls apart. And I'm going through it without my wife, who has been my best friend and support. I was certain I didn't have the whole story. So yesterday I looked into contacting other betrayed spouse. I knew I needed to hear what she had to say in order for me to get some clarity. She wouldn't have any agenda to lie or withhold whatever information she had from me. I found her FB account and wrote her on Messenger. She responded no more than 10 minutes later and offered to video call right then. I immediately replied that I was available. One look without a word, and I could tell she was going through a similar hell like me. She said that shortly after being escorted out of the workplace last Monday, she actually tried to get in contact with me, but couldn't find my details. In fact, one of the last things she said to my wife was threatening that she was going to tell me. When she was saying this, all I could think of was how my wife rushed home that day and how her sister told her that I needed to hear about the affair from her. I asked her if she knew more about what occurred during the team lead trip, or was this really just a one-night stand? And how did she find out? What she told me confirmed my fears. The affair dates back to before the trip. Documented proof from texts that were of an intense emotional affair. All of this, other betrayed spouse shared with me with screen share, and I could barely keep it together. She told me that back in January, she noticed that her husband was withdrawn and disinterested towards her. There were times she saw him texting my wife, but he would brush it off as work-related convos. The day before the trip, she went to the job to drop something off her significant other had forgotten, and she found in his office with my wife, standing close together, joking and smiling. She said the whole atmosphere between them felt flirty. When they noticed her, they parted, and my wife's face looked panicked while her husband went over it all together. She said it was then that she felt certain there was something going on between her husband and my wife, but she didn't address it because she wanted undeniable proof her husband couldn't escape from. After the trip, her significant other was more distant and dismissive. That night, she waited until he fell asleep and then checked his phone. She went to his text thread with my wife where everything was there to see. Intimate texts back and forth before the trip. It started as an emotional cheating, Others were of AP saying that it was impossible for him to focus at work whenever my wife was around. In these texts, it was clear that AP was the pursuer or aggressor toward my wife. But that doesn't really make a difference because she never shut down his advances. Some of the pre-trip texts were AP bashing his wife and going off about repeated miscarriages. It was just plain disgusting with how he talked about her to my wife. He kept mentioning how maybe he needed a woman like my wife. There were texts from last Thursday night with affair partner inviting my wife to join the team for drinks. And texts affair partner sent to my wife the following morning which clearly revealed that they had sex. At this point, there were no more replies from my wife after Thursday night. I didn't think it was possible for me to hurt any worse, but here I am. Other betrayed spouse said it took her everything to remain calm as she didn't want to alert her twins sleeping in the other room, but she didn't wake her husband up nor confront him immediately. She said that in her heart she was done with him, and that for her, he had crossed a line he couldn't come back from. She said she was more angry than she'd ever been during their marriage, and that through her anger, she was set on humiliating him like he had humiliated her. So she faked her smiles and acted like everything was fine and waited until Monday, where she was going to out him at work in front of his peers, underlings, and costumers. She said this confrontation had been brewing for a while now. Apparently, it was only a coincidence that my wife was at work that day as well. When other betrayed spouse saw my wife with affair partner and another employee, she decided to target my wife too. When she went on to calling out my wife tried unsuccessfully to get her to quiet down. Other betrayed spouse then started saying her husband had no signs of remorse in the slightest, but only anger at her public outburst. I learned from her that affair partner was fired the following day after the confrontation. She also kicked him out of the house and said one of the hardest things in her life was having to explain this all to her twins. I had an idea of what she meant because I saw my own mom have to do the same thing after my dad. She said that this whole ordeal showed her who her husband really was, and while her husband pursued my wife, nonetheless, my wife still had a part in the affair, and that as a woman, she had no sympathy or respect for my wife whatsoever. I told her I in no way fault her for that, and that she has every right. She actually apologized to me for her husband's role in the affair. I literally was at a loss for words for a moment, and then I apologized for the part my wife played, and she said that her and I are now a part of a club we never wanted to be in, a club that our significant others forced us in. She asked me about my wife and I told her that I honestly didn't know what I was going to do, but that I wasn't currently staying with my wife. She wished me all the best, and I did the same to her, and before ending the call, we exchanged numbers, so if we ever wanted to talk again. Every raw emotion was only heightened. I confided in my mom about what I learned, and she still didn't voice any judgment, but I could tell that she's upset with my wife. A part of me feels great happiness that AP is losing everything, his job and his family, and that maybe he's out there suffering as well. But I'm not proud of that feeling. At the same time, I feel immense guilt over that because a wife is losing her husband, and children are losing their family as they know it. Those kids are in for a whole world of pain. I feel anger also towards my wife for doing this to us, for breaking our vows, and for putting my health in jeopardy. We did have sex after she returned from the trip, and the post-trip texts hint that protection wasn't used. I do know I should resume contact with my wife regarding the information other betrayed spouse has provided me with, and demand a timeline. But at the same time, I feel even more lost than I was when I made the original post. I feel like I'm just drowning here. Update 2. I want to start this off by thanking everyone for the advice or kind words or support. Everything is appreciated. Admittedly, there's been some comments or messages hard to see, but they're nevertheless needed, and I feel like they're coming from a good place. 1 week since Discovery Day. After talking with other betrayed spouse, I've been trying to process everything. I haven't been sleeping well. To know that my wife, who I've known since we were 5 years old and started dating at 13, who had been my best friend or confidant, had an affair. I feel like an empty shell. When I step outside, I feel like people know, and they're secretly laughing at me. Has anyone else felt that way? I decided to break NC to request a timeline. The plan was to go Sunday without warning, and if I'm being honest, I wanted to give her another chance to be truthful and to see how she'd been living. Some mentioned AP could be at our home. It was painful to consider that she could be defiling the home we shared together for most of our adult lives, but after everything, it wasn't far-fetched. I texted other betrayed spouse for a description of affair partner's car and why I needed it. She sent the info. I made the drive back and looked out for affair partner's car, but it wasn't around. I went into the house to find my wayward wife by herself on the couch. She was stunned to see me. Her eyes were red and a little puffy, like she'd been crying. I hated seeing her this way, and I had this urge to comfort her. But then I recalled how we got here in the first place. It was confusing almost, not acting to help her. My wayward wife called my name with a sense of relief and moved toward me, but I asked her to stop. She did, then said that she'd been worried about me and thanked me for coming back home. I asked if affair partner had been in the house. She said no, but I searched the house, and she followed after while promising that he was never here. I didn't find anything that suggested affair partner was. I asked if she had any contact with him. She admitted he left a voicemail, but she didn't call back and blocked his number. She showed proof of this. We sat at the dining room table to talk. At this point, I tried not getting lost in emotion. I told her I would like for her to answer my questions. She agreed to do so, and that she's just glad I'm here and that we're talking again. I asked her if she had quit, and she said she hadn't yet, but on the same day affair partner was fired, she was suspended for a week pending an investigation. Tomorrow, she'll learn the outcome. She said AP's firing was the sole reason she hadn't quit like she offered. I asked her to tell me about the affair. She said she already did, but I told her that we both know there's more to the story, and now, giving her another chance to be honest with me, and if I were to discover any lies then there would be no going back. She was quiet for a few moments and then she nodded. She revealed the extent of the affair, and it matched with what other betrayed spouse showed me. The affair started emotionally, and that there had been some flirting at work, but she insisted they only had sex the one time. She didn't go into every single detail that other betrayed spouse showed, but she revealed the emotional affair. She didn't say anything I didn't already know, but it was like a fresh wound opened up after hearing her confirm it. I was left in silence again, like how I was on D-Day. She asked me to please tell her what I was thinking. I asked her why would she do this. She knew or saw my family's history firsthand, but still did this. Was she unhappy in any way? At this, she broke down crying and said she has never been unhappy with me or our marriage, that she loves me and our relationship is the most important thing to her. I said her actions speak louder. She said she doesn't know why she got involved in the affair, but she never wanted to hurt me, and it kills her. That by the time that they had sex, she made so many mistakes and realized she was in too deep and didn't know how to pull herself out, especially when affair partner had championed for her at work. She told me that the affair was no failure on my part, and that it's all on her. I asked if she felt forced by affair partner, to which she said that everyone loved him, and that as I know, there was a boys' club mentality. She said that she froze up during sex. She just kept saying sorry, and if she could take it all back, she would. My emotions were slipping, so I tried to speed it along, and asked why would she have sex with me, which she initiated. She only said that she felt so disgusting and guilty, that she wanted to wash it away by being with me again. I told her she didn't wash anything away. All she did was endanger me to ease her conscience. She didn't have a response. She only kept crying. I then asked her if she ever planned to tell me. She said she wanted to confess, was afraid because she knew how cheating was a deal breaker for me. She thought she could fix it by stopping the affair and not communicating with the affair partner outside of work. She said she stopped texting him after they had sex. I asked her if affair partner wore a condom, and she revealed sex wasn't planned and that because she froze up, she didn't mention it to AP. She said that she'll never forgive herself, and that I have every right to hate her, and that seeing the pain she caused me, and being without me with no contact has extremely scared her. She pleaded with me to give our marriage another chance, but I compared her to my dad, and that remark stung deep. She said she was nothing like him, but I asked where's the difference. She tried to take my hand, but I moved my hands out of the way. She said that we're not my parents, and it's different for us, and to please tell her that we can make it over this, after everything we've been through. I couldn't say that. I then made my timeline request. It seemed to terrify her, but I insisted, and she agreed. I told her that we needed to get tested. She agreed without an issue. I was barely keeping my emotions in order, so I went to go pack a bag and some essentials. She begged me to stay, saying that she'll stay on the couch, but she just wanted me to be home. I said that I couldn't stay here with her. When I was leaving, she said she loves me so much, and that she's sorry for everything. I didn't say anything in return. I couldn't. She then asked where I was staying, and I admitted that I was with my mom. She asked if I could tell my mom something, but said I can't be her go-between. I know she's also worried about her relationship with my mom. As I said before, she treated her like a daughter. Wayward wife never really had her mom in her life. There was neglect. She asked if she could hug me, but I said no and left. Now, I was looking at my options. She told more of the truth this time, but reality is still reality. I don't know what to make of her statement that she froze up. I also don't know if I'm ready to tell other people about the affair because I feel so embarrassed. Anyway, right now, I'm trying to take it day by day, and would greatly appreciate any advice on how to proceed from here. Update 3. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the continued support. Here's an update on the situation. I've been keeping light contact with my wayward wife. She texted that she was going in for the post-suspension meeting. An hour later, she said she was fired. We discussed the STD tests. We'll be going on Thursday. Last night, she FaceTimed me. I was hesitant to answer. She still looked the same as Sunday. She said she had finished the timeline, and I told her I'd be coming over tomorrow. She said that writing the timeline was one of the hardest things she has done, only second to our current separation. She was trying not to cry. Usually, I'd comfort her, but I couldn't. My mom offered to come with for support. She said she wouldn't go into the house, but she'd wait in the car. I think she was worried about me driving back. I accepted her offer, and I drove us. My wayward wife was waiting for me inside with the 2-page document. She was anxious. I sat by her on the couch. It was like Discovery Day again. I wanted her to read the timeline. She was thrown by this. The fear was clear on her face. Her and I were always so attuned, and her fear heightened my dread. I said I needed her to do this for me, and after a moment, she did. It was crushing on Discovery Day. It was crushing when I talked to other betrayed spouse. It was crushing when wayward wife admitted the emotional affair, and it was still crushing. The timeline covered from wayward wife being hired day, how her and affair partner's friendship begun, the culture at work, how emotional affair presented himself as different. While he joked with the guys, he didn't go along with the nonsense and kept his department intact. He started looking out for her and went out of his way to get her seen or credited. A friendship established. Emotional affair started, venting about his home life, and she was a listening ear to him. He would ask about hers. He seemed to be probing. She told him about her mom relapsing. He grew bolder in venting. She wished she'd spoken up, but was blinded by her view of emotional affair being one of the good ones. At work, co-workers mocked her of being emotional affair's favorite, etc. She didn't confide in me about this because at the time I was getting into it with my dad. She felt like her problems were petty in comparison, so she didn't want to throw it on me. She vented to affair partner. This started the emotional affair, and now emotional affair was being told about issues that I wasn't. This hurt to hear because we always kept an open line of communication with each other. There wasn't anything we couldn't talk about. No matter what I had going on, she was my first priority, and I would have been there for her. We were a team. Affair partner started flirting at work or texts, and she started flirting back. He told her that a promotion was coming up, and he wanted to make sure that she was a contender as she was one of the best employees. After the promotion, he hugged her. That was their first physical contact, and he joked that she could thank him some other time. When the team went out for drinks, they broke off to their own table, and he vented about other betrayed spouse and his kids. They went to his room under the pretense of listening to music, and taking the party upstairs to celebrate her promotion. He turned on music and talked about the view from his room. He pulled her to him and started dancing a bit. He kept saying how sexy she is, or if he were me, he wouldn't be able to keep his hands off of her. He eventually kissed her, and she froze up. Her mind shut down. Her mind or emotions weren't there. Emotional affair started groping her all over, and it went to sex. She didn't orgasm, and emotional affair finished quickly. He told her that was a hell of a celebration. He eventually fell asleep. She quietly got out of bed and left to her room. She immediately went into the shower and repeatedly scrubbed her body, but she still felt filthy. She didn't sleep that night and just cried as she thought of me. The next morning, there was only one meeting, but she didn't go. Affair partner called and said he was disappointed he missed out on a second go in the morning. She was barely replying, and he asked if something was wrong, but she lied that she was hungover. He told her that he'd cover for her at the meeting. He tossed the idea of them staying behind another day. She was afraid to tell me about what happened because she knew how cheating was a deal breaker for me. She made a plan to stop the affair by not communicating with affair partner beyond work. She came home early, even more wrecked with guilt as we reunited, but she acted like nothing was wrong. On Saturday morning, she initiated sex in an attempt to wash away what she did, but she only felt worse since she'd been with affair partner without a condom. On Monday, affair partner pulled her aside, and she told him that they should leave what happened in the past and that it was a mistake, but affair partner was refuting until another employee approached. After the confrontation, she called her sister in a state of panic. My sil found out the same day I did. There's more to the timeline, but I summed it up. While reading, she cried and took short breaks to catch her breath. I wasn't holding up much either. She touched my hand as she repeatedly apologized, but I removed my hand from under hers. I had to get out of there, so I asked for the timeline and left. Inside, my car broke down, and my mom, without saying a word, embraced me. I sat there crying in her arms like I was a little kid again. I was in no condition to drive, so she drove us back. My wayward wife kept calling or texting and blowing up my mom's phone, but I told my mom that I would handle it. I eventually called back. She asked if I was okay, but I said why in the world would I be okay? She apologized and said I was right. She was no better than my dad. She said doing the timeline was like confronting herself, that it gave her clarity. She said she loves me and has only ever loved me, that before we got together, we were friends who became best friends, and every moment with me she treasures. She said she hates herself for every choice she'd made at the job, that she knows nothing she's going through compares to what our other betrayed spouse and kids are. She said nothing she's lost mean anything compared to losing me. She asked if I could find it within me to reconcile, and she'll spend forever trying to show me what our relationship means to her, and do the work to make things right again. I couldn't respond, and my right hand was literally shaking. I only said that I needed some space. Do I regret hearing the timeline? Not really, because I needed to have it. Sometimes a decision can be hard for me, something I pick apart, but once I make one, do my best to stick to it. That's kinda always been my way. I have always loved my wayward wife. We have been through a lot together, and I don't want to lose our relationship, but I still look at what's happened, and I'm just broken. I do think individual counseling would go good. I did individual counseling for a year after my dad's affair. I also still want to go the polygraph route as well. I know I need to have my wayward wife take a pregnancy test too. She's on birth control, but still, I would appreciate any thoughts and advice on this whole situation. Update 4. Hi, everyone. First off, thanks to everyone who reached out and provided advice or support. Everything is appreciated. Here's an update. Since my wayward wife read her timeline, there hasn't been a moment. It hasn't been heavily weighing on me, and I still haven't slept well. I've read the timeline at least once every day, and with every read, I experience a variety of emotions: sadness, hurt, anger, and embarrassment. Sometimes I can't even form how I'm feeling into words. I don't think that she was lying or doctoring it up. Everything does match with what other betrayed spouse showed me. I think the timeline was impactful for her. The affair is the affair, but I do believe that affair partner preyed on her. I'm angry I was unaware of it and didn't protect her. When we were 17, there was this bad incident with her mom, and she came over to my house, and I held her in my arms and I promised I would always protect her no matter what. And I feel like I failed with affair partner. I didn't see his motives. I only took her word. On Friday night, I texted other betrayed spouse to see if we could talk. I wanted her input and to see how her or the twins were doing. She called. She had just put her kids to bed and said how rough it's been on the kids and that she's just been trying to focus on them. She said that it's going to be a bitter divorce. Affair partner's acting like the wrong party and puffed up with himself. He hasn't apologized or anything. He's living at an extended stay. She changed the locks so we couldn't come and go. I asked about affair partner's history, past cheating or abuse of power. She knew where I was getting at. She suspicions of past infidelities over the years that a woman always knew, but she never had proof he couldn't deny. She believes he grew overconfident or sloppy with my wayward wife. There was one allegation 5 years ago at affair partner's previous job. A co-worker reported him to HR for retaliating against her after she refused in advance, but nothing came of it. She was viewed as a difficult employee who was frequently late and dismissed as bitter after affair partner wrote her up. Other betrayed spouse, she ignored the warning signs because she was pregnant. There wasn't another allegation, and he had a great reputation. The info took me a minute to process. I did ask if affair partner gave her a timeline. She said she didn't care for one because she just wants a divorce. She asked if I had made a decision yet with my wayward wife, and I told her that I hadn't. She suggested her attorney when I was ready or just for a consultation. I took the info and thanked her. We talked for a little bit about life post-discovery day. Before hanging up, I felt more anger toward affair partner. I do believe he set his sights on wayward wife, but she still had an emotional affair which only grew, and I just feel so deeply hurt, lost, and betrayed. I really hate all of this. Yesterday, I still couldn't get what other betrayed spouse said off my mind. My sil called me, and the tone of her voice was troubling. She was worried about my wayward wife, that she didn't believe she was doing well, and had not been eating. She asked if I had talked to her at all, but I hadn't since Thursday. So far, my wayward wife has been respecting me, asking for some space. This did not please me to hear in the slightest. I hated the idea of my wayward wife being in this way, and every day with NC or not seeing her has been extremely hard for me. She asked if I could try talking with her, but she didn't have to because I had already decided on going to see her. On the way over, I stopped at this local restaurant my wayward wife loves and ordered her usual meal to go, and then I went straight to our home without prior warning. Admittedly, part of me wondered if I might find AP there this time around, but again, his car wasn't around. I entered the house, and my wayward wife was lying on the couch. The TV was on, but she wasn't watching it. She looked like she was going through hell. Conflicting emotions hit me. 1. Some choices of hers brought this on, and 2. I wanted to comfort her and promise her that everything would be okay. She sat up, surprised to see me. She moved to get up, I assumed to hug me, but she stopped herself. I showed her the food and told her that I needed her to eat something. This caught her off guard, and she said that I didn't have to do this, but I said I wanted to. I helped her get settled at the table, got her something to drink, and she started eating her meal. I asked if she heard from affair partner or if he's been to the house, and she said no. I asked if I could see her phone. Without any hesitation, she handed it over to me. While she ate, I spent some time searching her phone. There weren't any new convos with affair partner, and his number was still blocked. I waited until she was finished eating before I said anything up that could distract her. I mentioned that her sister had called, and this threw her off. She promised that she didn't ask her to do that, and she's been trying to respect my space request. But I said that it was okay, and that I wasn't bothered by the call. She said I shouldn't have to rush home to take care of her, but I said our vows say otherwise, and they still matter to me. She starts tearing up, and says that she ruined us, that she ruined me, and me or our relationship was the very best part of her life, and meant everything to her. She said that she's angry with herself, disappointed in herself, that I only ever loved and trusted her, but she hurt and betrayed me in the way that would tear me apart the most, and she'll never forgive herself. At this point, I don't know what happened, but her words had hit me deeply, and I just broke down. She kept saying that she didn't deserve me, and she just kept tearing herself to shreds. The last thing she said was that I must regret being with her. For the first time since Discovery Day, I cut in and said that my whole life has been wrecked, but she knew that I don't regret her. I listed how many times she saved me, and that I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her. I reminded her about the day we first met at the neighborhood playground when we were 5, or how at 13, when I admitted my feelings for her, and the entire time I was nervously stumbling over my words, and she held my hand to reassure me. Even then, knew I wanted to be by her side. How? When I proposed and she said yes, I was beyond excited for us to start our lives together in that way. I never wanted to part from her, that she was it for me, and that never once changed before Discovery Day. We just cried without saying another word. I tried to gather myself, then told her that I needed to go. As I was leaving, she thanked me for coming over, then said that she understands my need for space, and she'll accept whatever consequences come her way, but that she's not giving up on us, and that she's going to start looking into IC. I only nodded. I have my first individual counseling scheduled for Monday, but I feel like I'm nowhere closer to knowing how to proceed, nor do I feel any less lost. Every emotion you could possibly imagine is just wrecking me, and I feel like I'm trapped in a maze. I would appreciate any advice.